All right, get ready, because today we are diving deep into something pretty wild.
Oh, yeah.
Project Stargate.
Definitely wild.
This was a real U.S. government program, and they were looking into psychic phenomena.
Yeah, and not like some, fringe group either. This was the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA.
DIA, yeah.
Like serious business.
Serious stuff. And what we have is a declassified document, a research and peer review plan from 1994.
Okay.
Made for the DIA, and it's basically their plan for how they were going to study this stuff.
Multi-year plan.
Over multiple years.
Laying out the whole thing, like how they'd review it, all the science involved.
Yeah, they were serious.
They wanted to understand it, maybe even use it.
For real.
Yeah, like strategically.
Okay, so let's break this down. What were they trying to do? The document is pretty straightforward about its goals.
Right.
They wanted to know, first of all, were these phenomena real?
Like actually real?
Anomalous cognition and anomalous perturbation. I mean, those are their words.
Right.
So were they real? If so, how could they be used?
Operationally, right.
Operationally, yeah. Could they be countered?
Could you, stop someone from doing it?
Right. If someone was using it against us, could we stop them?
Yeah, and were the Soviets doing this too?
Exactly. So many questions.
Yeah, a lot of unknowns.
And they knew this was controversial.
Oh, absolutely.
They'd talk about the skepticism.
And so people didn't believe it.
Right. So they emphasize scientific rigor, oversight committees, specific criteria.
Like really trying to be objective.
Yeah. They wanted solid proof.
Proof that even a skeptic couldn't argue with.
So did they find anything? Well, the document doesn't actually say.
Really?
Yeah. It's like they give us the roadmap.
But not the destination.
Right. But it's still fascinating.
So where do we even begin with this roadmap?
Well, they break it down into two main areas, anomalous cognition, or AC, and then anomalous perturbation. They called it AP.
Okay, so AC, that's like gaining information, right?
Right, beyond our normal senses, so things like ESP, remote viewing.
Okay, so like knowing things you shouldn't be able to know?
Exactly, and they go deep on this.
Yeah.
They wanted to know, where does this information come from?
The source.
The source. How is it transmitted?
How does it travel? Yeah.
How does the brain receive it? Can other fields of science even help explain it?
They were looking at it from all angles.
All angles. And they had a timeline for each area, spanning from 95 to 99.
So they had a plan, like a real research plan.
A real plan. Imagine if you could use this for real.
Like what? You could gather intel, find missing people.
Maybe even locate equipment. Think about the possibilities.
Oh, and blowing, really.
It is. And then you have AP, anomalous perturbation, which is
influencing things, right, with your mind.
with your mind, yeah, like physical systems.
Like imagine influencing electronics remotely.
Right, or computer components. The document mentions remote switching.
That is both amazing and kind of scary, if you think about it.
Yeah, you start to think about security. What if someone uses this for bad things?
Exactly. Like there are definitely ethical questions here.
Definitely. And they acknowledge that this is controversial research.
They knew they were walking a fine line.
So we've got AC for intelligence, AP for potentially influencing events.
A lot of power.
But how do they plan to actually study this stuff?
Right. Good question.
Well, the plan outlines multiple layers of oversight, including a scientific oversight committee, a SOC, and then an institutional review board, an IRB.
So lots of checks and balances.
They were serious about doing this ethically and scientifically.
They didn't want it to be just, speculation and hearsay.
They wanted to be rigorous.
Exactly. Avoid bias.
And they used some interesting figures to illustrate their approach.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, figure 1, they call it the research overview, and it maps out all the research areas within AC and AP.
Oh, okay, breaking it down.
Breaking it down into like source, transmission, detector, integration.
Okay, so like categorizing everything.
Exactly. And then figure 2, research objectives.
Okay.
It highlights like how the research flows.
From like theory to practice.
Yeah, from basic research to applied research with goals for each.
So they were really thinking about how to make this practical.
Right. Not just theory, but how to actually use it.
Impressive, actually.
It is. So we see their plan, but let's get into the specifics. What were they actually looking at?
Yeah, let's dive into the details a bit.
Okay, so with AC, they were really focused on the source of the information.
Like, where is it coming from?
Is it the environment? Some unknown energy field? They even considered things like information theory, entropy, quantum parameter.
Wow, they were really thinking outside the box.
They were leaving no stone unturned.
And what about the transmission, how it travels?
Right. For that, they looked at electromagnetic waves, gravitational fields.
The usual suspects.
Right. But then also Like unconventional possibility.
Like they're open to anything.
Open to anything, which I think is great.
Shows they were really trying to find answers.
And then the detector, how the brain receives this information.
Right, that's key.
They focused on neurophysiology, looking at brain activity during AC events, possibly using EEG, MEG.
Trying to see what's happening in the brain.
Exactly. Didn't they mention some previous research that showed some interesting links?
Yeah, they were looking at magnetoencephalography, MEG. They thought maybe there was a connection between AC and some brainwave patterns.
Interesting. So they were building on past research.
Yeah, trying to pinpoint which parts of the brain were involved.
Wow. And then the integration part.
What was that about?
This is where they brought in other fields like physics, psychology, anthropology,
A real interdisciplinary approach.
even artificial intelligence.
Wow, they were pulling from everywhere.
Like they were building a whole new scientific framework.
Ambitious for sure.
Very ambitious.
Yeah.
And they list potential research institutions, relevant literature, all in the appendices.
So they had a plan, they had the people, they had the resources.
They were ready to go.
Really impressive.
It is. Basic research, applied research, multiple disciplines, rigorous review. They were determined.
It makes you wonder what they found.
It does. But remember, the document doesn't reveal the final results.
Right, that's the big mystery.
But we get to see their process, which is fascinating in itself.
It's like a glimpse behind the curtain.
Exactly. And this is just the beginning. We're just getting started.
Can't wait to see where this goes.
All right. So they had this big plan, but how did they actually, choose people for these experiments? I mean, we're talking about abilities that, well, a lot of people don't even believe exist.
Right, it's not like you can just put out a call for volunteers and, find people who can do this stuff reliably.
Exactly. So how did they go about finding their test subjects?
Well, it was a real challenge. They had to find people who, first of all, showed some evidence of these abilities, but then they had to make sure it wasn't just, luck or trickery.
They had to weed out the fakers.
Exactly. For AC, they looked for people who did well in controlled tests, like, those tests where you have to identify a hidden target or describe a remote location.
Like those ESP card tests you hear about.
Yeah, but more sophisticated than that. They wanted to see results that were statistically significant, way beyond what you'd expect from chance.
So no relying on anecdotal evidence or like one-time lucky guesses?
Right. They wanted solid, repeatable results.
And how did they find people for the AP research, the mind over matter stuff?
That was even tougher. They looked at people who had reported experiences of, influencing events with their minds, but they knew they had to be really careful.
Yeah, it's easy to fake that kind of thing.
Exactly. So they had to develop really rigorous screening methods to rule out any, trickery or deception. They were looking for the real deal.
Makes sense. It's a delicate balance, staying open-minded but also maintaining scientific integrity.
Right, exactly. They didn't want to, dismiss anything out of hand, but they also didn't want to be fooled by, stage magicians or people trying to make a quick buck.
So this sounds like finding the right participants was a big part of the challenge.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
Think about it. You're dealing with abilities that, well, most scientists don't even believe exist. It's like trying to find a unicorn.
Right, a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
Did they have any criteria beyond just, demonstrating these abilities? Like, did they look for any specific backgrounds or personality traits?
Well, they did mention considering people from diverse backgrounds, including people with experience in things like yoga and meditation.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they were exploring those potential links, between those ancient practices and these abilities. They were really trying to cover all their bases.
So once they found these potential participants, what did they do? Did they just throw them into experiments right away?
No, training was a big part of it, especially for AC. They believed that even people with, natural talent could improve their skills and their consistency with structured programs.
Like taking raw talent and like honing it into something more reliable and refined.
Exactly. And they explored all sorts of training methods, things like biofeedback, which helps people become more aware of their physiological processes.
Biofeedback. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Isn't that where they like hook you up to machines and you can see your like heart rate and brain waves and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. And they thought maybe by By becoming more aware of those things, people could learn to control them, and maybe that could enhance their AC abilities.
Fascinating. So they were really looking at this from like a mind-body perspective.
Yeah, they were trying to understand how the mind and body work together and how that might relate to these abilities. They even looked at things like altered states of consciousness, like hypnosis.
Hypnosis. Wow. That's getting into some pretty interesting territory.
It is, but hypnosis has been used in clinical and experimental settings for a long time, so it's not as far out there as it might seem.
Right. It's not just for stage shows anymore.
Exactly, and they were really careful about how they used these techniques. They wanted to make sure everything was ethical and that they weren't, manipulating people or putting them at risk.
Makes sense. So it sounds like they were using a pretty diverse range of training methods, trying to find what worked best.
Yeah, it was a lot of trial and error, but they were always trying to improve their methods based on the results they were seeing.
So it was a constantly evolving process.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about individual performance either. They were also thinking about how to develop protocols and procedures for operational use.
So taking it beyond the lab and into the real world.
Right. Like, how would you actually use these abilities in, intelligence gathering or remote sensing? They were trying to create a playbook, essentially, for how to use these abilities practically.
It's almost like they were building a whole new branch of intelligence gathering.
That's a good way to put it. They knew that to really understand the potential of these abilities, they had to see how they performed in real-world situations.
It's one thing to see results in a controlled lab, but quite another to see them replicated in the complexities of the real world.
Exactly, and that's where the document gets really interesting. It starts to outline how they planned to evaluate the program's success from both scientific and operational perspectives.
Let's talk about that. What were they looking for in terms of scientific validation? Like, how did they plan to convince the skeptics?
Well, they knew that the scientific community hadn't exactly embraced parapsychology research. A lot of scientists dismissed it as pseudoscience.
Yeah, I can see why. There have been a lot of questionable claims in that field over the years.
Exactly. So they knew they had to meet really high standards of scientific rigor.
They had to go above and beyond.
Right. They outlined several key criteria for evaluating the scientific validity of their findings.
Like what kind of criteria?
Well, first and foremost, they emphasize replication. Could their results be consistently reproduced in independent labs using the same protocols? That was seen as a crucial test of validity.
Replication. Yeah, that's the cornerstone of good science. If you can't replicate your results, it's hard to know if they're real.
Exactly. And they didn't stop there. They also emphasized the need for statistical significance. Were the results they were seeing beyond what could be explained by chance? They relied heavily on statistical analysis to rule out the possibility of, random fluctuations or flukes.
Crunching the numbers, making sure it wasn't just random noise.
Precisely. They also wanted to make sure their experiments were properly controlled with procedures in place to prevent bias from the experimenters.
Bias is a big problem in any scientific study, but especially in a field like this, where, subjective interpretations can easily creep in.
Absolutely. And they also acknowledged the need for what's called convergent validity. Could their findings be supported by evidence from other scientific disciplines? For example, did their neurophysiological research align with what we know about, how the brain works? Did their models of AC and AP have any basis in, established physics? They knew their findings needed to fit within a broader scientific framework to be truly convincing.
So it wasn't enough to just, demonstrate these abilities in isolation.
Yeah.
They had to show how they connected to our current understanding of the world.
Exactly. And they were very careful about documenting their methods and making their data available for peer review.
Transparency is key, especially with controversial research.
Absolutely. They knew their findings would be, scrutinized, so they wanted to make sure everything was above board.
Okay, so they had a solid plan for scientific validation. What about evaluating the operational potential of these abilities? Like, how did they plan to determine if these abilities could actually be used for intelligence gathering or influencing things remotely?
That was another key part of their evaluation plan. They wanted to see how practical and reliable AC and AQ would be in real-world settings. Could these abilities actually be used to gather intelligence or influence events?
So could you actually use this stuff to, to spy on someone or sabotage their equipment?
Well, they were certainly exploring those possibilities. They had specific criteria for measuring operational success. First, they wanted to see if AC and AP could provide information that couldn't be obtained through, normal means.
Hmm.
Did these abilities offer something unique and valuable, something that, traditional intelligence methods couldn't provide?
They had to prove that these abilities weren't just, duplicating what already existed. They had to bring something new to the table.
Exactly. They also considered the accuracy and reliability of the information gathered through AC and AP. Could they consistently deliver useful intelligence that could be, trusted? Were there ways to improve their accuracy and reliability over time?
So it wasn't just about getting information. It had to be good information, accurate and reliable.
Right. And they also factored in the timeliness of the information. Could AC and AP provide intelligence quickly enough to be relevant? Often, speed is crucial in the intelligence world. If it takes weeks or months to gather intel, it might be too late to act on it.
Makes sense. So they were looking for ways to streamline their processes and get information faster.
Exactly. And they also wanted to assess the cost effectiveness of these methods compared to, traditional intelligence gathering techniques. Were they a good investment? Were they a practical alternative to existing methods?
So they were thinking about the bottom line too, balancing the potential benefits against, budget realities and resource constraints.
Right. And it's important to note that they didn't shy away from acknowledging the potential risks and challenges associated with this research.
Like what kind of risks?
Well, they were aware that exploring the unknown always involves, uncertainties. They knew that these abilities, if they were real, could be powerful and potentially dangerous.
Yeah, you start thinking about the possibilities and it can get a little unnerving.
Exactly. They were aware of the wider implications of this research, particularly the possibility of it being, misused or abused. They addressed these concerns directly in their plan, outlining ethical guidelines and safeguards to ensure their research was conducted responsibly.
So they were trying to be proactive about addressing the ethical implications.
Yes, absolutely. They knew that this was a sensitive area of research, and they wanted to make sure they were doing things the right way.
It's refreshing to see that kind of foresight and responsibility, especially in a program like this, dealing with such controversial topics.
I agree. They were really trying to balance the pursuit of knowledge with ethical considerations. They knew this research had the potential to be, groundbreaking, but they also knew it could be dangerous if it fell into the wrong hands.
Makes sense. So they had a solid plan for scientific validation, criteria for assessing operational potential, and a clear awareness of the bigger picture. It sounds like they were really thinking this through.
They were, but there's one more important aspect of their plan that we need to discuss: how they intended to integrate these abilities into the wider intelligence community. If they were successful, how would they share their findings and, get other agencies to take this stuff seriously?
Right, because it's one thing to do research in a lab, but it's another thing entirely to actually get people to use this stuff in the real world.
Exactly. And they knew that to have a real impact, their findings would need to be understood and accepted by, other intelligence agencies and decision makers.
It's like introducing a brand new technology or concept to a world that's, used to doing things a certain way.
Right. And they had a multi-pronged approach to tackle this challenge. First, they planned to establish clear lines of communication with other intelligence agencies, regularly sharing their findings and progress reports.
So keeping everyone in the loop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They also wanted to develop training programs for intelligence personnel on how to interpret and utilize data gathered through AC and AP methods.
So educating the intelligence community about these new tools and techniques.
Precisely. They also recognized the importance of data fusion. How could information from AC and AP be combined with, existing intelligence from other sources? They saw the value in bringing these different perspectives together to create more complete and an accurate picture.
Connecting the dots, seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. And they also knew that, ongoing research and development would be needed to further refine these methods and expand their applications.
It was a long-term vision, a commitment to exploring the full potential of these abilities.
Exactly. They saw this as a journey, not a destination.
It's really remarkable how much thought and planning went into this program. They were clearly taking this very seriously.
They were, and it's important to remember that all of this was happening during the Cold War. The stakes were high, and the potential intelligence advantages of AC and AP were simply too significant to ignore.
It's a captivating story, really. Science, espionage, and the mysteries of the human mind all rolled into one.
It really is, and it makes you think about, what we know, what we don't know, and what might be possible.
Absolutely. And as we move into the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore some of the academic discussions surrounding this type of research and delve into the legacy of Project Stargate and its impact on how we understand, human potential.
It's a conversation that will challenge your thinking and leave you pondering the possibilities.
Okay, so we spent all this time with this plan, but
Yeah.
it's hard to ignore, the controversy surrounding Project Stargate and just the whole, field of parapsychology.
Right. A lot of people just don't buy it.
It's hard to blame them, really.
Mhm.
We're talking about things that, if they were true,
It would turn everything we know upside down.
yeah, it challenges our whole understanding of, how the world works.
That's like saying magic is real.
Exactly. So what has the reaction from scientists been like over the years?
Well, parapsychology, it's never really been accepted by mainstream science.
Why not?
Well, there have been, some cases of fraud,
All right, yeah.
experiments that weren't designed well, results that couldn't be replicated.
So not very rigorous.
Exactly. It's had a hard time being taken seriously.
So a lot of scientists are, really skeptical.
Oh, yeah. And you see this in the academic literature. The document even has, an appendix that lists studies on the scientific validity of what they call anomalous mental phenomena.
Okay, so what do those studies say?
A lot of them are critical. They point out flaws in the research methods, like not enough controls in experiments, bias from the researchers, difficulty replicating findings.
The basics, really?
Exactly. And then there's the whole statistical analysis issue.
Right, how do you even measure these things?
Yeah, how do you know if a result is meaningful or just chance, especially with these subtle phenomena?
Right, it's not like measuring, the speed of light.
Exactly. Some researchers say that even small effects could be important, given what we're dealing with.
I guess so.
But others say you need, strong, repeatable results to draw conclusions.
So it's still up for debate.
Yeah, definitely. But I think the people behind Stargate, they were aware of these criticisms.
They seem to be pretty self-aware in general.
They were. They knew there were problems with the existing research, and they wanted to be more rigorous.
It's kind of refreshing, actually, to see that level of honesty.
Right. They're not pretending they have all the answers.
It shows they were committed to, real scientific inquiry,
Yeah, being open to being wrong.
which is how it should be.
Absolutely. So we've talked about the science, but what about the implications, right?
Yeah, what if this stuff is real? What does it mean for us?
It's a big question.
It's like we're on the edge of a whole new understanding of, reality.
Maybe we have more power than we realize.
Mind over matter. It's a wild thought.
It is, and it's something we need to think carefully about.
So where does that leave us? We've seen their plan, talked about the science, considered the implications.
Yeah.
What are your final thoughts?
I think this document gives us a peek into a world most people don't even know existed,
Right, a secret world.
where the U.S. government was taking psychic phenomena seriously, really seriously.
It's kind of mind-blowing.
It is, and even though the document doesn't give us the program's conclusions,
Right, that's still a mystery.
it makes us ask some big questions. What is consciousness? What are the limits of human potential? What's out there that we don't understand yet?
So many questions, it makes you want to keep digging.
Exactly. And I encourage everyone to check out the Stargate files. There's so much information out there.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole I'm definitely going down.
Go for it. Keep an open mind and never stop exploring the unknown.
Great advice. This has been an amazing dive into Project Stargate.
It has.
Thanks for joining us, and keep those questions coming.
And keep diving deep.